So out here doing the next step on the 1966 slab side build. And what I'm going to do is fit this transmission plate, and then I'm going to set the transmission up there. Now, none of it will be bolted down yet. You don't want to tighten any of this stuff down at this point. But that little baby right there on the back of that old 4-speed transmission is a Cannonball electric starter, because, you know, I might want to ride this bike sometimes, and I know I don't want to kick it. I still haven't had electric start as long as I had kickstart bikes, and my back and my hip and my trick knee much prefer using my thumb. As the rest of the neighborhood goes about their business, I'm going to go about mine. The trick part about that starter that's on the back of there is it's a stealth starter, so it's kind of hidden. You can still use the tin primaries on it and everything else. But one of the things that you have to do is cut the rear fender for that starter to slip inside of. And there's actually a cover. Fell on the ground over here. There's actually a cover that goes in there. And that starter, the back side of that starter sits right in that opening. But before I do final assembly, I want to get that transmission with that starter on it kind of set up in there, so I don't come to find out that I've cut the fender wrong or something doesn't work that's supposed to work, and I have to tear stuff all back apart and ruin a paint job and everything else. So the back part of this plate will go into threaded nuts. I'm not going to put Loctite on them at this point because, like I said, I'm not going to tighten this all down. I just want to be able to have the transmission set, you know, within a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch of where it's going to be, and be able to, I guess you'd call it, dry fit that fender and make sure that that fender with that cutout is going to work with this transmission with this Cannonball Stealth starter on it. Just need to grab some washers for this front one. And that should be the right size there. Nylock nuts, but to just put it on temporarily. You don't want to spring those nylocks. I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard once you use a nylock, you know, the plastic that goes inside there to lock it gets worn out and they become non-nylocks. So I'm just going to use these, because this is not the final installation. This is to test that fender. If you ever find yourself doing this, there's a reason that I'm mounting the plate first on the bike. And that reason is you can't get these front bolts in with the transmission sitting over it. You'll see what I mean. See what I mean? Someone may have a trick to make that work, but I've always just found it's best to put the plate on first and then mount the transmission to that. I'll put the nuts, bolts, washers, and lock washers on the studs that come out on the bottom for the transmission. So I've got the nuts on the studs. Everything's just finger tight because, one, I want to be able to move this transmission once I put the fender on and dry fit it before the fender's painted and all the pretty work is done on it, so I don't ruin the pretty work trying to make the transmission that doesn't fit where it won't fit. I want to make sure that it all fits first. A stitch in time saves 9 is the old saying. So I will save all kinds of time by testing and making sure that fender fits like it's supposed to with the cutout that was measured on there and then cut, rather than painting everything, putting everything together, the final thing, and go to put that in and it won't fit. One of the reasons that I won't tighten all these things is I'll take it back apart, at least the nuts off, and I will put Loctite on them, and then when I do the final assembly, they'll stay where they're supposed to stay. You don't tighten the engine on these old ones. You've got aluminum bolting to steel. You don't tighten the engine and the transmission until you've got them all shimmed and they're fitting exactly how you want them to fit, or else you end up cracking things, breaking the aluminum parts. A lot of the reason guys used to break the cases on these old bikes back in the day when they were building choppers is they wouldn't shim the motor at the motor mounts, and it's all hard bolted, right? And if they didn't fit right, you were pulling that aluminum, which is much softer and much more likely to break than the motor mount, which is steel and is not going to bend to meet up with that aluminum. So they would assemble them and not shim the motors. We used to just shim them with trimmed up beer cans. Take a couple tin snips and snip down what we needed and slide it in there until it was flush, then bolt it down. But for the first time in my entire life, I'm not using trimmed up beer cans. I don't have them laying around like I used to when I still drank. So I actually have some real deal shims. And you can see the colors designate the thinness. The red is really thin, and the orange is much, much thicker. But I'll show you how to shim up that motor in some future video. For now, I'm going to call it a day. I need a shower. That's a smelfie right there, I'll tell you. And after I take a shower, I might fit the fender tonight. I might wait until tomorrow to do the fender. But once I fit the fender and make sure that it works with this transmission, I'll be ready to send the tins off and get them painted. Actually, I decided to paint them myself, so I won't be sending them anywhere. I'll show you me painting the tins too in a future video.